My daughter chuckled when she handed me nothing for Christmas, saying it was just like your promises. They had no idea I had been working night shifts to fund her college. I didn't get angry, I simply gathered evidence of their betrayal and disappeared. Now they've uncovered the truth about who really supported them all these years. I opened the gift as I had every year before, carefully, slowly, hoping to stretch out the moment, praying somewhere deep down that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas morning would be different from the last few. The box was light, almost weightless, but I still went through the motions of peeling back the red foil wrapping as if I were holding something precious, something fragile. When I lifted the lid, silence dropped like a stone in the middle of the living room, and all I saw was emptiness, the beige cardboard interior devoid of any note, card, or joke tucked inside. Just space. Then, from across the coffee table, Chloe's voice sliced through the air like a blade. "Just like your promises," she said, biting each word as if it tasted sour. Laughter erupted from her, from Diane, and even Tyler cracked a half-smile, though he quickly looked away, as if regretting it the moment it left his face. I looked down again at the box, at the nothingness. My hands tightened around it before I set it back into my lap, as if it weighed something again, as if it mattered. "Thank you," I said. That was all I said, not with sarcasm, not with anger. I made my voice flat, still like a pond just before the first ripple. I put the lid back on and set the box aside neatly on the floor, tucking it next to the tree as if it belonged there. Then I reached for the wrapping paper that had already been torn through by the rest of them, boxes of wireless headphones, cologne, a new coat for Tyler, a bracelet for Chloe, all for me. I had woken up at 5 to make breakfast, sausage, eggs, coffee, even homemade cinnamon rolls. Nobody mentioned it, not even a nod. The room had that tight feeling, like it does after a fight you don't talk about, just a dense, invisible fog pressing against your ribs. Diane was the first to break the silence, standing up and collecting her gifts without looking at me. She moved like she was being efficient, like the cleanup was her excuse not to meet my eyes. I spent the next 20 minutes cleaning up alone, nobody offered to help. They drifted off one by one, to Tyler back to his room with his headphones already on, Chloe to her car for a quick drive to a friend's house, and Diane upstairs to God knows what, probably to text her sister about how I took the joke too seriously again. The only sound in the house was the faint ticking of the wall clock and the soft crinkle of wrapping paper as I folded it into neat little squares, even though I knew nobody would reuse it. I tied up the trash bag, knotting it again as if it might split open from the weight of all that fakery, and carried it out to the bin beside the garage. The cold air hit me like a slap. December in Michigan doesn't ask for permission, it just shows up and bites. I stood there by the trash can for a full minute, staring at the thin clouds rolling past the morning sun. I remember thinking, this is the kind of cold that tells the truth. It doesn't pretend. It doesn't smile at you while it stabs, it just hurts, plain and honest. When I walked back inside, I didn't take off my coat. I looked around the empty living room, the tree still blinking, ornaments still swinging slightly from where someone had bumped into it. My coffee sat cold on the table, half a cinnamon roll remaining on Diane's plate, untouched. I grabbed my keys from the hook, my wallet from the drawer, and walked out the door without saying a damn thing. I didn't slam it, I didn't yell, I didn't leave a note or a dramatic pause or a speech about gratitude or what Christmas is supposed to mean. I just drove. And before you assume, no, I wasn't heading to a bar. I haven't touched a drink in over 730 days. I count because nobody else does. I wasn't looking to numb the sting, I was searching for something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't know what it was yet, maybe peace, maybe revenge, maybe just a place where I didn't feel like a joke in my own home. I passed the gas station on Main, then the church where Diane used to take the kids every other Sunday before we stopped pretending. I didn't even glance at the old bar on Elm where I used to crawl into a bottle and forget I was a husband, a father, a man. I think it's just me. I suspect there's been a whisper campaign going on behind the scenes, and if I had to wager on who's been fanning the flames, it would be Jason. He always shows up when I stumble, clean-shaven, shiny shoes, gifts in hand, and that smug grin like he's rescuing them from the mess I made. Chloe thinks he helped buy her car, she's under the impression he chipped in for her student loans. He probably lets her believe it, too. Tyler got a job through Jason's old college buddy. Diane? I caught her texting him once late at night. She said it was about Chloe's graduation planning, but I don't buy that for a second. I'm not saying he wants my family, I think it's worse. I think he wants to be the better version of me in their eyes, the Rick that could have been if only he hadn't screwed everything up. And I let it happen. I was too busy trying not to drown to notice he was filling their life rafts with subtle poison. It was after that thought that I decided to drive out to the storage unit on Oak and Hillcrest. I hadn't been there in over a year. I kept a few things there, stuff Diane didn't want cluttering the house, boxes of old photos, my dad's war medals, some legal files from the bankruptcy. The unit smelled like dust and guilt, and it took me a second to remember which box was which. When I found the drawer in the back cabinet, I knew exactly what I was looking for. I opened it, and there it was, right where I left it, an old black journal with a cracked leather cover, folded court papers from the custody battle my brother had with his ex-wife, and the burner phone I bought during my worst stretch, back when I didn't trust myself not to drunk dial Diane or scream at Chloe through tears. But I never threw it away. I picked it up and flipped it open, the screen blinked to life, showing 6 unread messages, 3 saved voicemails, and 1 contact labeled truth. I stared at it for a long minute, then sat down on the cold concrete floor and started listening. New Year's Day came without ceremony, without fireworks or noise, or any of the traditional distractions people use to convince themselves a clean slate is more than just a marketing gimmick with champagne. For me, it arrived wrapped in snow, silence, and the creaking wood of a 50-year-old cabin 2 hours north of town, tucked back behind pine trees so thick they could choke the signal out of any satellite. I didn't hear the phone ring when they called, didn't listen to Diane's carefully rehearsed voice message, or the sound of Chloe cracking under the pressure of her own guilt. I didn't hear Tyler's apology, mumbled and half lost in the static, or the way he tried to pass off his emotions as just being hungover. I didn't hear any of it because I wasn't home, and that wasn't by accident. I planted every single goddamn second of it 2 months ago. I planted the first seed. It was nothing big at first, just a casual comment to Diane over dinner about a new job opportunity in Ohio, a chance to relocate, reset, get some distance from everything that's rotted between us. She acted like she wasn't listening, but I know her tells, the way her fork paused halfway to her mouth, the way she didn't blink when she said, "You do what you think is best." That's her version of a threat, or maybe it's just a white flag from a woman too tired to care anymore. Either way, it worked. From there, it wasn't hard to steer things in the direction I needed. I stopped correcting them when they got things wrong. When Chloe snapped that Jason had helped her get the scholarship, I nodded and said, "Yeah, he's good at stuff like that." When Tyler asked if I still had the mortgage handled, I told him vaguely, "We'll figure it out soon," knowing full well the house had been paid off last summer with money I scraped together from night shifts and a quiet, humiliating sale of my father's antique watch collection. I watched as they all distanced themselves a little more each day, just far enough for me to see the cracks clearly. And in that gap, I left a trap, the burner phone I found in storage. It had more than messages, it had a recording app, it had GPS, it had access to an old cloud account I'd set up during my bender days when paranoia made more sense than trust. I didn't just listen to the messages they left for me on New Year's, I tracked the ones they sent to each other. Diane telling Jason she can't keep covering for me. Chloe thanking her uncle for helping with Dad's mess. Not her friend, but her emotional support, as she called him in another message, the one where she joked that Mark at least listened when she talked. She threw something after that, I don't know what, but I'm guessing it was the vase her sister bought for our anniversary, the one she always said was too blue anyway. Glass doesn't sound subtle when it shatters in a tiled kitchen, and I'm sure Tyler came running down to ask what the hell was going on, only to find his name sitting in that same email, buried under a file labeled rent logs. Every payment made from my bank account, not Jason's. Every dollar tracked, not because I needed credit, but because sometimes keeping receipts is the only way to stay sane in a house that keeps rewriting history. Tyler's pride is a fragile, twitchy thing, like a deer on a frozen pond always looking for solid ground but never quite finding it. He probably stormed back to his room, stared at the screen for a minute, then yanked his gaming monitor off the desk in one violent motion. He used to punch walls, now he breaks his toys instead. And Chloe? God, Chloe. That part hurt more than it should have. She was the last one I gave up on. Her voice was always the loudest in my mind, even when she wasn't around. When she read that email, when she heard her own recorded words, her calling me a pathetic shell of a man, her laughing at the idea that I'd helped her get through school, something inside her had to give. Not because she didn't mean it when she said those things, but because she thought she could say them without consequences. Because she thought I wasn't listening. The truth is, I hadn't stopped listening since the day she stopped hugging me back. She screamed, probably. She's always been dramatic, like her mom, but with sharper edges. Maybe she threw her phone, maybe she didn't say a word. It doesn't matter, the damage was done. And while all that chaos was unraveling, while the walls of their carefully curated resentment started to cave in on them, I was sitting by the window in a chair that didn't belong to me, holding a chipped mug of black coffee that tasted like firewood and old memories. The snow hadn't stopped for hours, it came down in heavy drifts, burying the tracks I'd left when I arrived, making the world around the cabin feel like it had never been touched by anything but wind and cold. I didn't feel proud, I didn't feel powerful. I didn't even feel vindicated. What I felt was tired because this wasn't justice. This wasn't some cinematic moment where the hero gets his due and the villains learn their lesson. This was a man realizing he'd spent more energy punishing his own silence than fighting for the people who now called him a ghost. I let it happen. I let Diane's distance become routine. I let Chloe's disappointment fester. I let Tyler believe I'd quit on him when I was just trying to keep the lights on. I stopped demanding to be seen the moment they decided it was easier to look away. But even in that failure, even in all that grief and regret and worn-out forgiveness, there was still something cold and sharp at the edge of my thoughts that felt good, not happy, not joyful, just good. Because now the cards were on the table. No more lies, no more silent treatments wrapped in fake holiday smiles, no more pretending that I hadn't tried. They knew, and knowing is the first kind of pain that might just wake someone the hell up. I sat there for hours, watching the snowfall, not moving except to refill my coffee. The fire burned low and steady beside me, casting soft orange light across the cabin walls. I wasn't waiting for a response, I didn't need one. They had the truth now, and whatever came next belonged to them. At some point, I pulled out the burner phone, flipping through the old saved messages just to remind myself how long I'd been keeping receipts. That's when I found it, a voicemail I'd forgotten existed, 6 years old, back when Chloe was still in high school and hadn't started resenting me yet. Her voice was small, softer than I remembered, like she was recording it from under her blankets late at night. Hey Dad, I just wanted to say thanks for the ride today and the coffee. I know you're tired and stuff, but I really like just talking. You always listen, even when I ramble. I didn't cry, I didn't blink. I just sat there, listening to a version of my daughter I hadn't heard in years. For a moment, the snow outside disappeared, and the weight on my chest lifted just enough to breathe. I stared into the trees for a long time after that, and I still don't know what I was thinking. No explanation, no return address, just instructions. Inside were documents, bank statements, legal transfers, a notarized letter. The details don't matter, not right now, not to you, but just know this, it wasn't revenge I was after, not anymore. It was clarity, it was distance, it was making sure the next time my name got dragged through a conversation, it came with proof they couldn't rewrite. From there, I drove across town to Mike's place. He was out in the shed, working on a busted snowblower, flannel sleeves rolled up to his elbows and grease smeared across his neck. I didn't say much, I just handed him the cabin key and clapped his shoulder once before heading back to my truck. He didn't ask why, that's the kind of friend Mike is. Maybe he figured I needed it more than he did, or maybe he'd already pieced together that something bigger was at play here. Either way, I left that key with a man who didn't need an explanation to do the right thing with it. Back at the house, my old house, things were already shifting. I could feel it before I even turned the corner. The air was tense in that neighborhood, like the silence before a thunderclap. Diane's car was parked crooked in the driveway, Chloe's hatchback out front, and Tyler's beater was idling at the curb, like he hadn't bothered to turn the engine off in his hurry to get inside. The door was already cracked open, I guess they thought I might still be in there, waiting in the kitchen like some wounded animal, hoping they'd come apologize and make things right. But when they stepped inside, all they found was absence. No couch, no pictures on the walls, no jackets hanging by the door. The place was stripped bare, not trashed, not angry, just gone. Clean, deliberate, final. Every room echoed in ways it hadn't in years. You don't realize how much space your life takes up until it's not there anymore. There was only one thing left behind, a small cardboard box sitting neatly in the center of the living room floor, right under the cheap chandelier we never got around to replacing. Inside that box was a single sheet of paper, folded once. It read, "Turns out some promises are empty, but not this one. I'm gone. Start over just like I did." I didn't leave a forwarding address, no contact number, no second chances. Printed in fine ink at the bottom was just the truth, written as plainly as I could manage. Because forgiveness, contrary to what they seem to believe, isn't something you can pull out of a drawer when it's convenient. It's earned over time, through action, not guilt. And trust? Trust is like a bridge that doesn't get rebuilt just because someone says sorry. It needs new wood, new nails, new blueprints, and I wasn't holding the hammer anymore. I left town without a word to anyone else, no social media posts, no long goodbye text messages. Just one final stop, Detroit Metro Airport, long-term parking lot C, where I left my truck with a full tank and an envelope of cash taped to the glove box for whoever needed it more than me. Inside the terminal, I didn't browse or wander, I walked straight to the counter and asked for the first one-way flight that left within the next 2 hours. It didn't matter where. I didn't even flinch when she said Phoenix. I boarded with nothing more than a duffel bag, my wallet, and the burner phone turned off. Finally, as the plane lifted from the runway, I looked out at the skyline disappearing beneath the clouds and felt nothing, not regret, not relief, just space, like I had finally stepped out of a story that was never mine to finish. You can sit there and judge me if you want, say I abandoned them, say I should have stayed and fought harder. Maybe you're right, maybe I am the villain after all. But sometimes, when you spend too long proving you're not the bad guy, you forget to ask yourself if these people are even worth saving. They laughed when they gave me an empty box, they mocked what they thought were my failures and never asked once if I'd actually been trying. So I gave them back something they'd understand, emptiness, but with meaning, with intention. This time, the promise wasn't hollow, this time, it was the only thing that was true. And if they ever want to find me, they'll have to look in places they've never dared to go, places where honesty doesn't come wrapped in sarcasm, places where silence isn't punishment, it's peace. Because I'm not coming home, not now, not ever. Let them start over just like I did. 3 years later, I've grown to love the desert, the way the heat rises in visible waves off the pavement. After that, I almost didn't recognize her when she walked into Hell's Diner last Tuesday. The desert sun can play tricks on your eyes, making you see what you're afraid of or what you're hoping for, but it was Chloe, alright, thinner, hair shorter, eyes harder around the edges. She slid into the booth across from me without asking, placing her hands flat on the table like she was studying herself. "It took me 16 months to find you," she said. "No hello, no tears, just fact." I nodded, taking another sip of coffee to buy time. I wasn't hiding. The waitress came by, refilled my cup, and took Chloe's order without noticing how the air between us felt like it might catch fire. "Mom got the divorce papers," she said after the waitress left. "She signed them, didn't contest anything." I nodded again, that much I knew. The lawyer had confirmed it 6 months back. Tyler's engaged. Girl named Melissa. She's good for him, makes him try harder. My throat tightened at that. Good for him, I meant it. And you? I asked, the first real question I'd offered. Finished grad school, environmental law, working for a firm in Chicago. She paused, tracing a finger along a crack in the laminate tabletop. Paid my own way through. Didn't take Jason's money. That made me look up, really look at her for the first time since she sat down. The hardness was there, yes, but something else too, something that reminded me of myself. He lied about a lot of things, she said, quieter now. We figured that out after you sent the email, after we found the house empty. I didn't respond, there wasn't anything to say that would make it better, make it easier. Mom's seeing someone, a guy from her office. Not Mark. A small, bitter laugh escaped her. Turns out she was lying about that too. And Jason? I couldn't help asking. Uncle Jason doesn't come around much anymore. Not since Tyler found the bank statements. Not since I told him exactly what I thought about men who manipulate families for sport. Her food arrived, but she didn't touch it. You could have stayed, she said, her voice catching slightly. You could have made us face it, made us listen. I shook my head. No, I couldn't. Why not? Because you weren't ready to hear it. Because I wasn't strong enough to say it without breaking. Because sometimes the only way forward is through absence. She blinked hard, looking out the window at the mountains shimmering in the distance. That empty box was my idea. Her voice was so soft I almost missed it. I thought it would be funny. I didn't think. I know, I cut her off. You were hurt. People lash out when they're hurt. Don't do that. She snapped, eyes flashing. Don't excuse it. I was cruel. We all were. I let the silence settle between us again, desert silence, honest silence. I'm not here to ask you to come back, she finally said. I just needed to see you, to know you're okay. I am. Better than okay. She nodded, pushing her untouched plate away. I have something for you. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small package wrapped in plain brown paper. It's not empty. I unwrapped it slowly, using the same careful movements I'd used that Christmas morning. Inside was an old leather wallet, cracked with age and use, my father's. I'd left it behind. Found it in the attic, she said. Thought you might want it back. I ran my thumb over the worn surface, feeling the imprint of years pressed into the hide. Thank you. She stood then, slinging her bag over her shoulder. I'm staying at the motel on Route 17, room 14. I'll be there until Friday if you want to talk more. I watched her walk away, watched until she disappeared into the brightness outside. The wallet sat heavy in my hands, a fragment of a life I'd let go. That night, I stood on my small balcony, watching the stars emerge one by one. The desert cools quickly after sundown, eager to shed the memory of the day's heat. I thought about Chloe in her motel room, about Tyler and his fiancée, about Diane starting over with someone new. I thought about the distance between forgiveness and forgetting, about the space between letting go and moving on. I didn't know if I'd go see her before she left. I didn't know if there were words worth saying after all this time.